Hey everyone, it's Antonio Galloni. Welcome back to another video focusing on grower champagnes. And I'm just really excited to taste these four wines today. Unlike a lot of the videos, where I sort of have had the privilege to taste some really high-end wines, I thought it'd be fun here to focus on grower champagne, but really looking at more of the entry-level wines. And that just was an observation that I had today tasting these wines, which was just absolutely terrific. So we're going to go through three producers, four wines, Vilmart, Pierre Peters, and Aubry. In the United States, these three producers are part of the portfolio of Theise. And I don't think there's a single person in this country who's done more to really raise awareness of the grower champagne category than Theise. He's got a really good selection of producers, reliable, consistent, outstanding year after year. These are three of my favorites, but there's a lot of other great names in that book as well. But today we're going to talk about three producers. So Vilmart, Peters, and Aubry. Vilmart for me is just one of the really great houses in Champagne. It's the proprietor Laurent Champ makes just beautiful wines. One of the key attributes of the Vilmart wines is that they're all vinified in oak, and it's quite unique to go to the cellar and see these big casks and barrels with wine which you don't see in too many places. Just an impeccable winery, totally clean, absolutely pristine. No surprise that the wines are really extraordinary. If you have an interest, you might want to take a look at the video that I shot with Laurent Champ on our site, which is about a year ago. So fall of 2011, where we talked a little bit about the house's philosophy. So today we're going to talk about the Grand Cellier, which is not really the super entry level, but more of a mid-tier wine. It's about $75 retail, so not inexpensive by any means, but you're getting a lot of bang for the buck. 70% Chardonnay, 30% Pinot. The base in this wine is 2009. And right now you're seeing a lot of non-vintage wines with 2009 base vintage, and that's just as it is in a lot of parts of Northern Europe. Really radiant, sexy, voluptuous vintage, and you're going to see that in some of these wines. So anyway, we'll taste the Vilmart, and let's see. What I love about Vilmart is just such an elegant wine. It's so fine, so finessed, so silky. Just a totally elegant wine. It's absolutely beautiful. I drink these wines whenever I can, and I think that this is a great example of a wine. You don't have to go to the super high-end wines to really get the essence of the house style. Oak is really, neutral, of course, very fused and seamless, but it does give this wine this breadth. You don't get these sort of oxidative kind of notes like the honey and the almonds and the nuts like you might get in something like Krug. He's really managed to really maintain a lot of focus and precision, give his wines really a nice breadth and creaminess, but without that oakiness. My guess is, certainly for me, I think if I tasted this wine blind, I don't think I could peg it as a wine that sees oak. It's just, one of those wines where everything is in perfect balance and just a great showing. Then we move to Pierre Peters, which is another one of my absolute favorite wineries in Champagne, anywhere really. Rodolphe Peters, he just makes beautiful wines with a lot of focus. I confess I've drunk more than my fair share of Le Chatillon, which is their high-end wine. It's a single vineyard wine. Pierre Peters is based in the town of Menil, which everybody knows for Krug's Clos de Menil, which is out of my reach most of the time. But the Pierre Peters wines are brilliant. They really capture that energy, that tension, that vibrancy. I thought it'd be fun to taste the Cuvée de Reserve, which is here again, it's the entry-level wine. Just fantastic. This wine has really changed a lot actually since we opened it a few hours ago, but let's see where it is right now. So, the Peters wines, all Chardonnay, all steel. This is base 2009. Really interesting to see how this wine has changed over a couple hours. I said it's base 2009, but with an addition of reserve wines that goes all the way back to 88. So there's really nice complexity here. When we opened this, it was incredibly tight, really, all of that sort of flint and crushed rocks, lemon, lime, white flowers. And now, after a couple of hours, that richness of the vintage has really come out. It's really round and voluptuous. Still in that Menil style, but very different. with air. And I think that that's one of the things that a lot of people don't know about Champagne, is that you know, Champagne is really a wine, just like any other wine, and these wines really do benefit from being opened an hour or two in advance. Personally, I'm not a big fan of decanting Champagne, which has kind of been a trend in the last few years, but there's no question that opening a wine and giving it a couple of hours of air is going to really unlock the aromatics in the fruit. This is a perfect example of where that's happened, and this is just a dazzling wine. It's about a $60 retail, you know, which is a lot less than the Chatillon, which is sort of more of a $100 bottle. But Peters, you know, they have a great rosé, and they've got a great middle tier vintage wine called L'Esprit de, in this case 2008 is the new vintage that's out there. But you know, really hard to go wrong with a Pierre Peters wine, especially if you like Blanc de Blanc and sort of more of the piercing, bright style of Champagne. These are great. And then we moved to Aubry. You know, I tasted a lot of Aubry wines today, but two were just dazzling. And again, one of the reasons I like these wines a lot is because they don't cost a ton of money, unlike some of these other wines that I've been tasting recently. You know, a normal person can actually afford these, which is important for all of us. And you know, Aubry is really, you know, one of those houses that you just don't hear people talk about too much. And I think probably Vilmart and Pierre Peters have a much more of a higher profile. But for me, when I taste the Aubry wines, they are just full of soul, full of personality, and just really unique. A couple of attributes of this house is the sort of focus on some of the historic varieties in Champagne that you don't see too much. Arbonne, Petit Meslier, for example. Some of the wines are done in a lower pressure system, or with fewer atmospheres of pressure, let's say 4.5 as opposed to 6, which is more normal, and that creates this very fine mousse, really fine bubble. And there's just something about these wines that's, you know, really personal. And I think that you know, life is short, and you might as well drink wines with some real personality. And Aubry will always deliver that. Sometimes the wines are, you know, kind of push the edge a little bit, but you know, I'd much prefer a winemaker who wants to take chances than something that's sterile. So we start with Aubry Brut Premier, mostly red grapes. Pinot Meunier, you know, Pinot Meunier is really the third grape of Champagne. It's after Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. It's mostly used in non-vintage wines because of its ability to give this kind of round creaminess. And here, it's about 45% of the blend. There's also 25 of Pinot, then Chardonnay, and some of the more eccentric white grapes that we talked about, Arbonne, etc. And this one was just really impressive when I first tasted it a few hours ago. I mean, the level of just elegance here is just stunning. I mean, this is I think, what, a $42 wine? Unbelievably beautiful. You know, the aromas and flavors here are very bright. This is one of the things I love about this wine is there's contrast. And we've talked about that before in these videos, but wines that can push and pull, that can be many things at once, that can change in the glass. And what this Aubry Brut has is that ability to have this very high-toned, floral, bright fruit, sort of overtones of flavor, all supported by the richness of those red grapes. Then you really feel the texture of the red grapes, but it's really more in the body and the mouthfeel, where the aromas and flavors are quite bright. And I find that contrast to just be totally compelling, because this is a wine that really has a lot to say. And it is the entry-level wine. It's a great introduction to this house. Again, artisan, handmade wines. I really encourage you to check this out. This is just a gorgeous wine. You know, Champagne is never inexpensive, especially good Champagne. But this is one of the best wines I've tasted this year in the 40-ish price range, and it just proves that, you know, as much as I love drinking, you know, some of the higher end stuff, the bottom line is you don't have to spend a lot of money to drink well. And this is a great example. And then now we're going to taste Aubry's Rosé. You know, I kind of like to mix it up in these videos. It's I sort of like to have as many producers as possible, and but these two Aubry wines were just so great that, you know, I thought we had to have this in the video. And the Aubry Rosé, again, is also mostly red grapes. Look at the color of this wine; it's absolutely beautiful. This is mostly Pinot Noir and Pinot Meunier. It has a great nose. It's about 35% Chardonnay, and you know, I should have mentioned some of the Pinot Meunier is still red wine that is blended in to give the color and the intensity of fruit. And this wine was just beautiful. there's a weight and a richness and a vinosity in this wine. It's just totally alive. Sexy, rich, and voluptuous. Not at all the kind of wine that you want to serve before dinner. Unlike, I think there's still this idea that champagne is kind of a before dinner wine, before you get to the real wines. But this is really a wine that's for the dinner table. I would love to sort of, I don't know, James, can we get a Pinot glass? I want to taste this in a bigger glass. It's kind of trapped in this little glass. Let's see what happens. No, what about the other one, the the Oregon Pinot one, the one over there? Yeah, lately I've really liked, I've really liked using this this other glass. This is the glass that Riedel calls Oregon Pinot, and I guess I was a little violent there, but we'll let that settle down. It's a glass that Riedel calls Oregon Pinot, but I use it for Nebbiolo, and I use it for Pinot champagnes and or rosés with a lot of Pinot Noir, and I think this is going to really unlock the fruit here. Yeah, this is just gorgeous. You taste this wine in this glass, and it just, all of the aromas and the flavors just explode. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful wine. I think the retail price is just under $60 here. And it's just another wine that really delivers the goods. Again, as I said, champagne is not ever cheap, but this is a wine of real pedigree. You could put this up against things that cost twice as much money, and you'd have no problem. It's just a great showing. So there you have it. One more sort of installment in the Grower Champagne series. 3 great producers I would highly encourage you to check out. Vilmart. Pretty much anything you get from Vilmart is going to be delicious. We also tasted the 06 Cuvée Rubies Rosé. It was just unbelievably beautiful. Much more expensive, but great. Pierre Peters, cannot go wrong, especially if you like Chardonnays. Something special. The Chatillon, their top wine is fantastic, but the lower level wines are just as beautiful, as evidenced by this Cuvée de Reserve. Excuse me. And then, Aubry, which is just a small little winery in the middle of nowhere, but making wines of real personality, real character. Again, a focus on the historic grapes of Champagne, which you don't see too much anymore, and wines that really push the edge. And personally, I'm really attracted to wines where people are taking risks and making things that are a little bit off the beaten track. And when I'm looking for that kind of experience, Aubry is right at the top of the list. So there you have it. Cheers, and see you soon.